Alright, let's talk about some adhesives. Adhesives are anything you use to stick stuff together, whether it be an integration or simply installing that switch so it doesn't move. I'm going to go over many of the common types of adhesives we use and tell you the pros and cons of them. So let's start off with this little thing. It's a hot glue gun. Okay, the glue comes in a solid form that goes in the back. It heats up, you squeeze the trigger, glue comes out of the nozzle. It gets everywhere. So the pros to this is once you have it up and operating, the refill packs for the glue are extremely inexpensive. I'm talking like $1 for like 12 sticks, okay? They're literally a dime a dozen. You obviously have to buy the glue gun first. That's the downside because that's a little expensive. Can run as cheap as maybe $7, as expensive as $20 or $30 depending on the make and model you get. You have to wait for this thing to heat up. So you gotta plug it into the wall, wait for it to get up to the temperature, squeeze the trigger, see if glue comes out. If not, you have to. It's kind of inconvenient to use. Now also, once you glue something with it, since this glue reacts to heat, if you live in a particularly hot environment, the glue can let go. Another thing to consider with it is it's messy. The whole time you're using it, glue can drip out of the tip and you're putting a hot cone near plastic that melts it. If you use hot glue, I recommend using something else. I'm just going to be honest there. Okay, so after that, you generally hear people talk about super glue, also known as CA glue or acetylate glue. Hope I'm saying that right. Comes in many different shapes, sizes, and forms. Okay, it can be kind of expensive. This little container holds 0.14 ounces and is like $7. The Loctite Super Glue Ultra Control Gel, that's my favorite, but it's also the most expensive. This is much more economical. It's over half an ounce for $3. This is actually almost a full ounce, 0.85 ounces, and it was like $3. What's nice about CA glue is they're all relatively fast setting. So like this one sets in 10 seconds, this one sets in about 15, this one sets in 30. They come in different weights that you can basically choose how fast or slow you want the glue to work. Okay, it does have some odor, so that's a downside if you work in a closed-in space. Also, yeah, it's a little brittle, so it's not a very flexible joint. So if you put two things together and there's a little bit of vibration, sometimes that'll break the joint loose. Okay, CA is one of my as you can tell, is one of my go-to adhesives. I use it for whenever I need to set something fast. Okay, our next options are going to be much slower options, but they're much more permanent and much more flexible, pun not intended. Gorilla Glue is a polyurethane moisture activated glue. Okay, what this does is basically it takes moisture out of the air, which causes the glue to set in, creates little bubbles in it. With that, you get an extremely lightweight adhesive. Okay, it's relatively inexpensive. This large bottle I think was only $5. It is an extremely strong hold. You're basically making your own plastic with a whole bunch of air pockets in it. Okay. The downside to it, it is not a quick set at all. According to the bottle, you damp it, you glue it, you clamp it. Why it says clamp it? The original cure time on it This is not the full cure time. This is just to get it to the point where you don't have to hold it together, is 1 to 2 hours. And then you should allow up to 24 hours for full curing. I love this stuff. I use this a lot for integrations. I actually like to put it on my switches. I'll put that on, and then I'll use super glue to tack it in place while this cures. Okay, next up you'll hear a lot of people talk about epoxy. Comes in all different shapes, sizes. You have single tube epoxy, 2-part epoxy you have to mix together. I use JB Water Weld epoxy. It works well. Downsides to it. Once again, you have a long setup time on it. 24 hours for it to fully cure. But it basically becomes a solid, rigid material. It's less flexible than the Gorilla Glue. However, the Gorilla Glue has an uneven finish on it. So a lot of times on my integration, what I'll do is I'll Gorilla Glue it together. Once the Gorilla Glue sets, I'll take just a little bit of epoxy, go through and smooth out my joints. Now, the other thing is, once it's set, you have to sand it, and sand it, and sand it. And when you think you've sanded it enough, you have to sand it some more. It does take a lot of finishing work before painting. It's also extremely heavy compared to the other adhesives. So using a lot of epoxy can add a huge amount of weight to a blaster. So these are your basic adhesives you'll hear people talk about. Your epoxy. Most people just call that Gorilla Glue, even though it's polyurethane hydro activated adhesive. Your super glue or CA glue, and your hot glue gun. Out of all of these, the only one that I try to shy away from is the hot glue gun. The other 3 have their uses. Now that you know the pros and cons, you can better apply them to your nerfing applications. Hope to see you again. We'll talk to you next time.